Good evening and welcome along to another edition of MesmePolitics. It's just gone 7 o'clock. My name is Toby Mesme, and over the next half hour we have got a lot to bring you. All the latest in the world of UK and US politics, brought to you and consolidated in one political radio show. Let's dig in. So what's going on? Well, as always, a hell of a lot is going on. I'm going to level with you. We will delve in towards the end of the show into the government, its latest announcements on COVID, the possibility of restrictions being ramped up, and on top of that, the Chancellor's economic statement. Coming up next, I want to talk to you about Nancy Pelosi's impeachment ultimatum and the articles of impeachment being brought forward by House Democrats and the whole process, the strategy that should be pursued, and what we should make of the whole thing. Please get in touch throughout the show in the chat. You know we love to hear from you, and we'd love to hear from you right now. First story of the day, Keir Starmer. He's come out of the woodwork. He's been saying things. He's been doing things. It's a welcome change from a leader of the opposition who has been record-shatteringly timid of late. But now the hard slog of actually opposing the government begins for Sir Keir as he sets out a vision to get through COVID and hints at the direction of travel Labour will take under his leadership. Welcome to MesmePolitics. I'm Toby Mesme. It's Monday night, the 11th of January 2021. Let's get stuck in. The government must look at new coronavirus restrictions within the next 24 hours, Keir Starmer has said, naming estate agents and nurseries as those that could face further curbs to halt the spread of the virus if necessary. In his first major policy speech, the Labour leader called for the government to give employers the right to put workers on flexible furlough to allow them to look after children while schools are closed, as well as extending support to the excluded 3 million workers who have no support. Starmer said the government was doing little to support working families who had to work full-time and homeschool their children during the national lockdown. He said Labour in power would create 400,000 jobs in low-carbon sectors, and he said the government had not honoured its contract with the British people by failing to get the virus under control after many months of restrictions. He hit back against the, quote, 1.9 billion bombshell that lands a bill of around £90 on every family in regards of council tax hikes, and calling for more funding for local authorities. He urged the government to pull its plan to cut the £20 universal credit uplift, and he criticised the decision to freeze public sector pay for millions of key workers. Also saying he wanted the public to hear daily press conferences with the underlying message of stay at home. Let's hear some of Sir Keir's speech. We'll go through it and then we'll talk more in depth about it. So this is Keir Starmer urging people to stay at home.
As the vaccine is rolled out, we all have a part to play. We have to stay at home. We have to follow the guidance. And we have to protect our amazing NHS. I appreciate how hard another lockdown will be for the millions who are juggling childcare with working at home, for young people when the school gates are closed, and for businesses that aren't allowed to open. We all want to see our loved ones. We all want to reclaim our lives. But we have a job to do first, as a people and as a country. As the vaccine is rolled out, we all...
Okay, first, what's the visual meaning behind all this? It's something I haven't seen before from Labour. And people were making a lot of fuss about this. I'd love to know your thoughts on it. So, the colours behind him are purple. He's also wearing a purple tie. We're not blue, we're not red. And the purple background is sort of pink, blue, purpley. And it is basically a superimposed Union Jack behind him with the slogan, "Secure our economy, protect our NHS, rebuild our country." Now, my problem with that is not the Union Jack. I think, to be honest, if that's the price Labour have to pay to make themselves credible again, it's not that simple. But if it was, I have zero problem with, putting a Union Jack in shot. Who cares? Literally, who cares? The question I'm more interested in is the dilution of Labour's colour scheme. What does purple mean? People have taken it as some sort of assault on Labour's true red values. I'm not reading that far into it, but it does look... Maybe it's an effort to... I mean, it looks quite nice. It's quite possibly an effort to sort of appeal to the country in a non-party political way. I think I like it. But I don't, I want the red back as soon as possible. Let's hear Keir Starmer criticising the Prime Minister here.
Every time there's a big decision to make, Boris Johnson gets there too late. He was too slow to lock down in March of last year, too slow to protect our care homes, too slow to save jobs and businesses, and too slow to get protective equipment to the front line. In the summer, he ignored the warnings to prepare for a second wave. In September, he ignored the science and delayed a circuit break, only to introduce a longer lockdown a month later. And in December, there was the debacle about household mixing over Christmas. And then, when he was told by his scientists on the 22nd of December that a national lockdown was needed, he delayed again for nearly 2 weeks. The indecision and delays of the Prime Minister cost lives, and they cost people's jobs. The British people will forgive many things. They know the pandemic is difficult, but they also know serial incompetence when they see it. And they know when a Prime Minister simply isn't up to the job.
Very tough words from Keir Starmer there. He's right in what he's saying. The only problem is he's also complicit in many of the failings because he failed to proactively criticise the government at the time. But he's laying out a very strong and a very reasoned critique. He went right through throughout the course of this speech. Everything the government had got wrong at each point, March lockdown, track and trace, November lockdown, Christmas, each debacle sort of clearly and succinctly laid out. Good, that's right. It was very eloquent, sort of the thing going forward there is to remember to actually criticise those things at the time, because criticising them at the time means you'll be taken more seriously when you come back and go, well, why did you do this? Because if the government shits the bed and then Keir Starmer says, oh, you shit the bed, the government can just look at them and go, well, you've also shit the bed. Let's hear Keir Starmer talking about his new theme, families first.
On top of that, they want to freeze pay for millions of key workers who've got us through this crisis, including our armed forces, our care workers, our teachers and our firefighters and police officers. This shows that the government isn't just incompetent, but also that it has the wrong priorities. This is the government that gave Dominic Cummings a £40,000 pay rise, but won't pay our carers a decent wage. This is the government that wasted £22 billion of taxpayers' money on a testing system that doesn't work and now can't find the money to support families. And this is the government that sprayed money on private contracts that didn't deliver, but won't give councils the support that they need. That's why I'm calling on the government today to put families first during this lockdown.
So we'll hear Keir Starmer talking about flexible furlough here. We're nearly at the end of these clips.
Working parents have been left once again to juggle childcare and work. That's hard on the kids. It's hard on the school staff. And it's tough on every parent. For those who can work at home, it's difficult. But for those parents who can't work from home or don't have a partner to share the load, it can mean the difference between keeping their job and looking after their family. So the government should go further to support working parents by creating a legal, enforceable and immediate right for parents to request paid flexible furlough and promoting that right to all working parents to help them get through this lockdown. Working parents have been left...
We don't want Keir Starmer on repeat. That would be a funny way to keep the show going, wouldn't it? Just Keir Starmer saying the same thing on repeat again and again and again and again. So ideas that Keir Starmer is proposing are in the short term right. It's right to hear him. It's good to hear him speak up on so many of these things he's been pretty silent and ambiguous on. But we need to hear more of the long-term ideas going forward. That's really where the proof of the pudding is in the eating. The eating is the long-term ideas for how you fix society. Excellent to hear him talk about things like rebuilding on a 1945 scale, which he did during this speech. Things like that. That's right. It needs an Attlee-level vision if Labour wants to win in 2024. Good. Short-term fixes are good, but I also want to hear the big, broad, radical policy provisions when it's the time to lay those out. I want to hear them in the future. I want to see the case for them being made in the present. Because if we don't make the case for them in the present, then they will not be sellable in the future, because you just chuck them out on the campaign trail. People are like, what are you on about? I also want the discussion to be less about tougher lockdown restrictions. Tougher lockdown restrictions in themselves, stopping people going to the park, are not exactly how we're going to stop this chaos. The way we stop this chaos is by ensuring and regulating and making sure the government stops letting factories, letting hairdressers, letting all these different establishments stay open, be labelled as key workers, let unscrupulous bosses basically coerce people into coming in. It's not the public. Even the public think it's the public, but it's not the public's fault that we're in this mess. And Labour need to push back on that big time. Big time. And it's more about businesses less than tougher restrictions and making sure businesses toe the line. The majority are, but there are these instances of unscrupulous bosses that we didn't see on the same scale during the first lockdown. And a side point, I love the format of these. This is a good thing. I didn't see Jeremy Corbyn do as much of this. And I think it's a welcome innovation, a modernisation, if you will. It's good. Someone says, well, they gave Cummings a pay rise. It's true. They did give Cummings a pay rise, but they are freezing the pay for essential workers, which is concerning, to say the least, in terms of priorities. Again, Labour should lay into that. I love the format, and on a final point, before we hear Keir Starmer talking about vaccines and then move on to America, patriotism, talking about Britain is really great and having the flag and all that, is harmless. If Labour really think that's how they win back the Red Wall, I don't think it is, but if they think it is, I have no problem with that, as long as it's not exclusionary, as long as it doesn't feed into the great myth of Great Britain, then realistically, what's the harm? The problem with it is it's not even close to enough to win back trust, and you cannot, just become a full-time flag shagger and alienate the young supporters that you really need at the same time. It's a tricky balancing act, but the old Union Jack here and there, I find it really difficult to get annoyed about that. Like, really difficult. Let's hear Keir Starmer talking about the need for 24-hour vaccinations.
We all need to play our part. Government, businesses, our armed forces, public services, and tens of thousands of volunteers coming together like never before. The government says it can deliver 2 million doses a week by the end of the month. I hope they do so. And let's hold them to that and help them with that. And then we must deliver even more and double that target in February. This isn't just about government, it's about all of us.
Quite right. Step up the vaccinations, big, ambitious demands and targets. Good. We're starting to see Labour imply they would handle this whole thing differently. That's what I was spitting fury at yesterday and this morning about them not doing. They've now done it. Over to the States, and Donald Trump is in danger of being impeached, removed from office as House Democrats formally begin the impeachment process against him for the second time. The single impeachment article was introduced to the House at 11 a.m. Their time, 4 p.m. our time, and marks the first step in the Democrats' move to unseat the president. Led by Speaker Nancy Pelosi in the House, they are charging him with incitement of insurrection for his role in last week's riots at the US Capitol. It comes as Republicans blocked a bill aimed at pushing President Trump out of office through the 25th Amendment. Hoyer tried to pass the resolution this afternoon through unanimous consent, but it was rejected by West Virginia Republican Alex Mooney. This paves the way for Democrats to force a full House vote on impeaching Trump later this week. The House continues with all this tomorrow. Let's hear this report from Today.
Today, the pressure is mounting on President Trump after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, for the first time, vowed to bring a vote on impeachment if Vice President Pence does not invoke the 25th Amendment to remove the president from office. Pelosi on 60 Minutes last night.
The person who's running the executive branch is a deranged, unhinged, dangerous president of the United States.
The timing of the impeachment vote unclear.
This president is guilty of inciting insurrection. He has to pay a price for that.
An emotional Pelosi also giving chilling new details about Wednesday's attack, saying her staff hid inside her office for 2 hours.
What happened was a terrible, terrible violation.
Republicans are still divided, with Pat Toomey becoming the second GOP senator to call for the president's resignation.
I think the best way for our country, Chuck, is for the president to resign and go away as soon as possible.
As if he will. He definitely won't. And thank you for today for that. Politics aside, the great political perils in going forward with this. It has to be done. That's my consistent line on this. The impeachment has to be done. This is not the first impeachment. There's a clear dividing line. Whose side are you on? You're getting a despot out of office. You're holding him accountable for what he's done. Or you are enabling future Trumps to come down the line and do the exact same crimes. Whose side are you on? It's as simple as that. It's much bigger than what the Biden presidency can achieve. It's much bigger than 2 years of Democratic control of the House and Senate. It is about a whole precedent that will echo for future generations and through decades of American politics. The eyes of the future are on what we do right now. Simple as that. In this case, I have so many disagreements with her. She's essentially politically closer to Margaret Thatcher than to myself. Nancy Pelosi is right. She's not got much to lose. She's in her 80s. She's had a very long career. She has a legacy, so she's going to say what she means at this point. She's right here. She's absolutely right. Plough on, right? Get it done. I think talk in the New York Times today of a delay of around 100 days until a Senate vote on the whole thing is probably right. Let the Biden administration have its first 100 days, get a crack at the whip, and then go into, charging the former president with insurrection, because it's about ensuring it can't happen again, not getting him out right this minute. Not going to be possible to get him out right this minute unless the 25th Amendment is invoked. If it is, that's a penalty, and we can drop the whole impeachment thing, I would say. John says, very impressed with Starmer's speech, showing signs of coming out to fight. Couldn't agree more. Someone says, yes, and start dipping into the nation's consciousness now. That's about Starmer. Yes, Starmer should dip into the nation's consciousness. I love how you say that. That's quite good. Exactly. That's how you win an election. You just repeat the same slogan over and over again. The impeachment isn't likely to pass, but there may be a route to blocking President Trump from ever standing again in US politics. That would be a win. That would be a penalty. It's all about imposing a penalty for literally inciting insurrection. This is, it's non-stop. Like 2021. Who knew it was... People were like, it's all going to calm down. No. Virus is worse than ever. Politics is more volatile than ever. The Biden administration isn't going to be a basket of puppies. British politics is over the moon, sort of confrontational. The whole thing just continues. I honestly don't think it's ever going to slow down. Just strap in. Every day it's just bam, bam, bam. It's never going to stop. And, I hate the state the world's in, but I'm living for being able to cover literally history every single day. Moving back to the UK. And England's chief medical officer has said the next few weeks will be the worst of the pandemic, as he urged everyone to minimise meeting people. Professor Chris Whitty said the public should not wait for any government tinkering with rules, but should double down now on avoiding any unnecessary contacts. Pleading with the public, he said even within the rules we should be doing our level best to minimise the amount of unnecessary contact with people who are not in our household. I can't emphasise that enough. He said the NHS is facing its most dangerous point, saying in London, for example, 1 in 30 people currently have the coronavirus. This is a serious problem, and it's rising in every part of England. Daily cases, about 55,000. Daily deaths were nearly 600 daily deaths. Total percent of the population to have received the first dose of the vaccine is 1.9%. And we've rolled out 333 vaccinations last week. The whole thing is frankly terrifying. I think we can all agree the state of affairs with the virus right now. Here's Boris Johnson warning of stricter COVID restrictions in the future.
I think what Chris Whitty had to say this morning was absolutely right. This is a very perilous moment because everybody can sense that the vaccine is coming in. They can see that the UK is vaccinating large numbers of those who need it most. And my worry is, and Chris's worry, is that this is the moment where that could breed a false confidence, false complacency.
Now, my problem with Johnson here is, well, the main problem which I have with the government is it's not people's fault that the whole thing's spiraling out of control. Of course there are irresponsible people, but that's not the difference between this and last March. The difference between this and last March is A, a government even more incoherent than it was then, but B, unscrupulous bosses that the government isn't taking on. So we're blaming the public when actually the people with the power to change this, banning people from getting their exercise is not the solution here. The solution to this is tackling those core vested interests that are forcing people to go to work. Rishi Sunak did an economic statement following up from Johnson's emergency announcement this time last week of a lockdown. Parliament's back in business. The charlatans have returned. They've descended on Westminster, some of them via Zoom. Here's a little snippet of Rishi Sunak's statement.
While the vaccine provides hope, the economy is going to get worse before it gets better. Many people are losing their jobs. Businesses are struggling. Our public finances have been badly damaged and will need repair. The road ahead will be tough. Now it is time for responsible management of our economy, taking the difficult but right long-term decisions for our country. But, Mr. Speaker, I am confident that with this comprehensive support the government is providing, and above all, the determination, enterprise and resilience of the British people, we will get through this.
The Chancellor needs to acknowledge the reality of the crisis we face, a crisis made worse by his government's irresponsibility, with our economy having suffered the worst recession of any major economy, and he needs to act accordingly. So can I ask him to respond to those questions which businesses and workers desperately need answered? Will he update the furlough scheme to reflect the dates of this current lockdown?
That's Sunak and Dodds there, sparring through Zoom, in the case of Dodds, across the dispatch box. It's a load of hot air from Rishi, absolute hot air. People seem to lap it up, but it is complete nonsense. He's not really said anything of substance, ticking all the difficult decisions down the road. The thing I would say to Labour is combat the slow march of austerity right now. Combat it right now. Get combating it from tomorrow, okay? Because they're going to make the case, and they make the case about all the deficit fear mongering. They're going to make the case that they need to they need to make cuts and we've got to make difficult decisions all bandied together. The reality is no. That's not what needs to be done. There is no need to do that. Borrowing will still be cheap as chips by 2024. There is literally no need for austerity. And to be honest, we're going to be running high deficits as a society, as a world, for the foreseeable future because, quite simply, we're dealing with an elderly population. We're going to have to splurge on a lot of that. That is the way we're going into a great economic slowdown around the world. We were even without COVID. There's no way of combating that. Deficits are going to be part of the new normal for a very long time to come, possibly forever. And we have to combat the perception of the UK economy being a household. It's not a household. We can print our own money. I'm not suggesting we print money willy-nilly, but right now we can do that, and we're not going to have to make really hard choices to pay for that in future. It sounds too good to be true. It is the reality. It is not splurge, just keep printing money. But what we've done does not require hideously hard choices in terms of, cuts and massive tax hikes on working people. These are not necessary. And both of those would strangle the economic recovery, whether they're done soon or in the longer term or the medium term. Let's have a listen to what the government had to say at its press conference today. Matt Hancock urging you to act like you have the virus.
There's been speculation about more restrictions, and we don't rule out taking further action if it's needed. But it's your actions now that can make a difference. Stay at home, and please reduce all social contact that is not absolutely strictly necessary. That's what's needed. Act like you have the virus.
Okay, but you're asking people to go to work at the same time. Useless and untrusted messaging from the government. Please do follow the rules. John says, raise wealth taxes. We can pillar the government, but at the same time want them to succeed at this. That's just where we are. We're all willing on a group of people we've grown to despise. John says, raise wealth taxes to increase national income. Austerity is suicide. Completely agree. A wealth tax is not a catch-all solution. It's not a magic money tree. There are other magic money trees often found in the Cayman Islands. A wealth tax isn't necessarily all that, but it's going to raise a lot of money. And if we implement it effectively and hit the right purses right where it hurts, that will go a long way. And it will essentially do what the proponents of austerity claimed austerity would do but never did. Those wealth tax ideas will bring far more back into the government purse, or shrink the debt far more than any austerity measure would possibly do. We can't forsake capital investment. Big capital investment, including in terms of deficit spending, of course, is going to be needed if we want an economic recovery worthy of the name. It's just where we are. The thing is, Keir Starmer has essentially got to prepare to spend big in the late 2020s if he were to become Prime Minister. That's going to be a thing you're going to have to sell politically and make the case that, look, this is not economic suicide, this makes sense, here's why. In order to do that, we need to start hearing that talk ramp up. Now, I would advise Labour to maybe, do press conferences with economists backing up their approach and stuff like that, because there's no shortage of economists who back this sort of thing. A group of pretty high-profile economists said Labour's 2019 manifesto was exactly what Britain needed in the Financial Times. The left can win that argument on economics if they actually make the case. If they cower and accept austerity and deficit hawkery logic, they will not. Thank you for joining me today. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel, put notifications on, tell your friends. We'll be back with you exactly same time tomorrow for more of the same. All the latest in UK and US politics from a unique leftist perspective. You can get me on Twitter for my daily hot takes at TobyJoshuaUK, or on Medium at TobyJoshuaPolitics for my twice daily 2-minute reads. That's it from me. I'll see you soon. Have a great rest of your Monday and have a good Tuesday. I'll see you at the other side of it.